Welcome to Deer Park High School for tonight's performance of The Importance of Being Ernest. In case of emergency, please note the exits on either side of the stage and all the exits at the back of the auditorium. Please silence your cell phones. May you enjoy the show.
Did you hear what I was playing, lady?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, sir. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with a wonderful expression. As far as the piano's concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got your cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Broughlin?
Yes, sir.
By the way, lady, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when I was dining with Lord Shroman and Mr. Worthing, 8 bottles of champagne were emptied. Have they been consumed?
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've observed that in married households, at least, the champagne is rarely a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up until the present. I've only been married once. That was in consequence between a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It's not a very interesting subject. I never think about it myself.
Well, very naturally, I'm sure. That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
My dear Ernest, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
Oh, in the country. Now, what on earth do you do there? When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses others. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in Shropshire?
Well, perfectly boring. Never speak to one of them.
Oh, well, how immensely you must amuse them. Shropshire is your country, is it not?
Shropshire. Yes, of course. Hello, why all these cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that all is very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly horrid. It's almost bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
My dear fellow, I have come up to town expressly to propose to Gwendolyn.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
I don't think there's anything romantic in proposing. I think it's very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. Well, one usually is, I believe, but then the excitement's all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll surely try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Oh, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them this whole time.
Well, this is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Here, have the bread and butter. The bread and butter is ordered specially for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And what good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, eat not as if you were going to eat it all. You act as if you're married to her already. You're not married to her already, and I don't think you'll ever be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls don't marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That's nonsense.
Well, it isn't. It's a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all around. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I can allow you to marry her, you must clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? Well, what on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone with the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette, please, Mr. Worthington. You were smoking room the last time you dined here.
You mean to tell me you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know about it. I've been writing forensic letters to Scotland Yard about it, and I was nearly offering a large reward.
Oh, well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no use in offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather needed words, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I see that the thing really isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what's written on the inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to do to read one's private cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule of what one should read and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one talks of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a gift from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just get back to me, Algie.
But why, if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells, does she call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall and some aunts are not tall. That is surely a matter an aunt may be able to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt must be exactly like your aunt. It's utterly absurd. For heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection. I admit to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, would call her nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
But you've always told me it was Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. I've introduced you to people as Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever seen in my whole life. It's utterly absurd you're saying your name is not Ernest. It even says it on one of your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, The Alderman. I'll keep this as proof your name is Ernest if ever you attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Come, old boy, you'd better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algie, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. I must say, I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to reveal to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here you are. Now produce an explanation and please make it improbable.
My dear friend, I'm afraid there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. You see, the old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a young boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Now, Cecily, who addresses me as uncle out of motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives in my place in the country, under the charge of the admirable governess whose prison.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. However, I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I've Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear friend, I don't know if you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. You see, when one is placed in position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. Now, as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much of either one's health or happiness, to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother of the name Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets in the most dreadful scrapes. And that, my dear friend, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either modern literature a complete impossibility.
Now, that wouldn't at all be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not my forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Leave that for people who haven't been in university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. Well, I was quite right in saying you are a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to go up to town as often as you like. I have invented a perfectly invaluable invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go up to London as often as I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I've been very engaged with Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, it is absurdly careless of you. You are very foolish about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had better much dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intentions of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday. Once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman at all or 2. And in the third place, I know already whom she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband across the dinner table. It is not pleasant, indeed it is not even decent. And that's the sort of thing that's on the increase nowadays. The amount of women in London who flirt with their husbands is perfectly scandalous. It's just so bad. It's simply washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you all about it. I want to tell you all the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I think I'll kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Miss Cecily's a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I think you should do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That's nonsense. If I'm going to marry Gwendolyn, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You seem not to realize that in married life, 3 is company, and 2 is none.
Now that, my dear friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the past 50 years.
And that the happy English home is proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that way, Mary and Leonard. Now, if I leave you alone for 10 minutes, so that you may have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not bad. It would leave no room for development. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry for the late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I haven't seen her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have that cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, I'm not quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane! Where are the cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It's quite all right, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It has changed color. From what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. That would put my table completely out. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, I need I say, a great disappointment, but the truth is I have received a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, Algernon, I think it is high tide that this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice. As far as any improvements with his ailments goes, I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury for me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he's still conscious. And I think I can tell you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, now, the music is a whole other issue. If one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll look over the program I've done out. If you'll kindly go into the next room with me.
Thank you, Algernon. It was very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful, after I make a few changes, of course. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they're improper. But German sounds that they're in a respectable language, and indeed I believe so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Please don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Brocknell's temporary absence.
I was certain if I was to do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I often have to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of the fact. And I often wish in public at any rate you have been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I've only known Mr. Worthing, in the age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There's just something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, well, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Well, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, have very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life, as we know them.
Personally, darling, I must say I don't think the name Ernest suits me at all.
Suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. Produces vibration.
Oh, really, Gwendolyn, I must say, I think there are a lot of other much nicer names than Ernest. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She'll probably never know the entrancing pleasures of a single woman's solitude. The only safe means
Darling, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you have led me to believe that you weren't absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn,
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
you know what I've got to say to you?
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been on it? I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderful blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from the semi-reclined postures, most indecorous!
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of that fact. An engagement should come to a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as any case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. Now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing, while making these inquiries. You, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn! Gwendolyn! The carriage!
Yes, Mama.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Brocknell. I prefer to stand.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men. Although, I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke, Lady Brocknell.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been under the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know everything or know nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Brocknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with the natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory on modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes, and would probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted of one during one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It provides one with position, but it prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Well, I own a house in the country, with land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres or so. But I don't rely on that as my real source of income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who get any real use out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that could be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house in Belgrave Square, and it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She's a woman considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number of Belgrave Square?
149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I knew there was something. But that could be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us or come with us in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I'm afraid I've lost both my parents, Lady Brockman.
Both! To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise in the ranks of aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. You see, Lady Brocknell, when I said that I had lost both my parents, it would be nearer to the fact to say that, well, they seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found.
Yes, Lady Brocknell. By the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an older gentleman of a very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he had a ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with this first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was found in a handbag. A somewhat large, brown leathery handbag with handles to it and an ordinary handbag, in fact.
Where did this Mr. James or, Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
The bright line?
The line is irrelevant, Mr. Worthing. I must confess I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born or at any rate bred into a handbag, whether it has handles or not, seems to me to display the ordinary decencies of family life. It has probably been used for that purpose before now, but it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in a good society.
May I ask what you would have me do then? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly do that, Lady Bracknell. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you.
Me, sir? What does this have to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I or Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For heaven's sake, Algie, don't play that ghastly tune. How idiotic are you?
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't need to say Gwendolyn refused you. Well, I know the way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Her mother, on the other hand, is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't exactly know what a gorgon is like, but Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she's a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair of me. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk of your own aunt that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest knowledge about how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
That's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I'm not going to argue about it. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Say, you don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother, no, about 150 years or so, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That is his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody's clever nowadays, and you can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing is an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had 2 fools left.
We have.
Oh, I would extremely like to meet one. What have they talked of?
The fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
Have you told Gwendolyn yet about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
The truth isn't the sort of thing one tells a nice, sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, and to someone else if she's plain.
That's nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the prolific Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died abroad in Paris, of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd better say, A severe chill.
And you're sure severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the sort?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest was suddenly carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him?
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little more interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't you feel as lost a great deal?
Miss Cecily isn't a silly romantic, I am glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention to all of her lessons.
I'd rather like to meet Cecily.
And I will take very good care that you never do. Cecily is excessively pretty, and she's only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet about you having an excessively pretty ward who was only 18?
One does not just blurt these things out at people. Besides, by the end of the week, they shall be great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that a half hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if you won't have a good seat in Etta Willis's, you'd better go and get dressed. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
And I never knew when you weren't.
Well, what shall we do after dinner? Maybe go to the theater?
Oh no, I've loathed listening.
Well, let us go to the club.
Oh no, I hate talking.
Well, maybe we'll trot around the Empire around 10.
Oh no, I can't bear walking around and looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
My dear fellow, it's awfully hard work doing nothing, but I don't find hard work where there's no object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very important to say to Mr. Worthing.
Oh, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude toward life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
Dear Gwendolyn.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I say we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the youth is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had with Mama, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred a deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address in the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There's good postal service, I suppose. It might be necessary to do something drastic. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town? Good. Algy, you may kindly turn around now.
Thanks. I've turned around already.
May also ring the bell.
You will let me see you out to the carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Lane, tomorrow I'm going Bunbury,
Yes, sir.
and I shan't be back until Monday.
Yes, sir.
You could put all my dress clothes and my smoking jackets and my Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Now there's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I've ever admired in my life. What on earth are you amused at?
Oh, just anxious about Paul Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your poor friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
Well, I love scrapes. They're the only things in life that are never serious.
That's nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
No, Nobody ever does.